Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's happened again. It's happened again. Spurs have embarrassed us. It's happened again.
Tottenham on tour.
Right, so here we are, back again after the first one we did. Back by popular demand. I got my brother, Johnny. How are we doing, brother?
I'm here in shock. Another day, another shock. Who'd have thought it, huh? The club that just
honestly,
keeps on giving.
It's become so unbelievably believable that just one day we can't get through. So we're going to start, Johnny. Obviously, the big news today, and I've been waiting to come on and rant all day, so we're going to rant together. And the Italian job of 18 months ago is becoming the Italian jobless. What have you thought about today's events?
I mean, it's hard to believe. I mean, it's been enforced, this ban, worldwide ban now by FIFA. That very, they're not a corrupt organisation at all. I mean, there's been no corruption around FIFA, but it's okay for them to cast judgment on Fabio due to a message that came from the Italian FA. Look, where I come from, you're innocent till proven guilty. There was 11 members charged in this case. 2 of them stepped down, Agnelli and Nedved. Paratici left in 2021, so June 2021, so he's been there for about 18 months. I think that the club obviously have looked at the charges. To appeal, you have to be presented with the charges put in front of you, and I would have thought that the lawyers would have looked at it. The fact of the matter was the interview that was given yesterday by Paratici was probably given because on Monday he was meant to be in jail. In jail. He could have been in jail. No, on Monday he was meant to be in court, and that court case was delayed until the 10th of May. So the club probably thought they got clearance now to put him in charge and, let's deal with it in May. But it's a whole new different ball game now. What do you do? What do you do? I mean, I've got to say, I'm very anti-Levy, but Paratici is probably the one signing that Levy has made that has been fantastic. I mean, behind the scenes, the infrastructure he's put in place. We'll probably go on about this afterwards.
We are going to. So before we do that, what we will...
The problem we had before with Hitchin and Levy, it was like Batman and Robin, one man and his dog, and we wonder why we were in the mess, And Paratici's come in, he's looked at it, can't believe what he's seeing, and he's put an incredible infrastructure in place. He's brought in Gababini, who, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have got Destiny. He's brought in Steinson, and he's brought in Scolding from Rangers. So he's put the infrastructure in place. And not only that, we were losing so many of our youth players because they're becoming disillusioned. And somehow or other, he's managed to get Devine, Mundell, and Donnelly to sign contracts, which is a massive plus for this club.
Yep.
Not sure about Mikey Moore just yet, but that's a big plus. If we were to lose Paratici, this club might as well go back to the Stone Age, because what we're going to have is Daniel and his committee of 1 or 2 deciding on transfers. It's going to be hell. It's going to be hell. And if we think it's bad now, it's just going to be awful later. That's all I know.
I agree. We'll move on to this part, which is obviously you've mentioned it's now worldwide. Now, I've got quite a bit to say this. I mean, the fact that they allowed him. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind they knew this was coming. They knew Tottenham Hotspur knew this was coming as this broke like wildfire this afternoon. But it was like, let's just try and get all the blood out of this stone and just let him be the mouthpiece one more time for me in regards to that video they put out yesterday. I mean, the fact that we had a guy that had criminal convictions upon him. Yeah. Listen, we fucked up once again. Just before you get absolutely thrown to the lions, let's just get some more crap out of you. That interview was blah, 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 blah. I mean, I was speaking to people yesterday. The way that this man came out, and I knew this was orchestrated by Levy. Now, I'll tell you why. Because when we asked the trust, or the trust asked them for the questions that we got that we got answered back, the very first question was, how long or what is the immediate and long-term plan of the club? And the first thing Levy said was, in the last 17 years, we have. I was like, no, I didn't ask you for the past. I was there. I asked you about the present and the future. And Paratici did it yesterday when he goes, yeah, we said goodbye to Conte. It was right. Let's go back to the beginning. We were in the Conference League last year. And I was like, no, we know that. And then halfway through that video, I don't know if anyone else found it weird. All of a sudden, they just went off about talking about the club and showed a youth cup goal, saying, now we've made a final. And I'm like, yeah, that again has got nothing to do with what is going on with the shit that is going on at the top. And now, the very fact, I mean, people were very quick to make pictures of the prison cell, and it looked like he was in a hostage.
Well, I mean, listen, Brian,
what
I fail to understand is why they didn't make the any comment. As usual, the club makes no comment, but they should have made a comment prior to the transfer window. We're thinking, well, how is a guy who's potentially being carted off to jail doing all the transfers again, right? I mean, surely not, right? Okay. And then when the transfer window closed, who did they wheel out? Paratici, talking about the transfer window and everything. And I actually believe that the club actually didn't know that that they were going to enforce this worldwide ban as quickly as they did. I'm not quite sure why they have done it like this. I mean, why, FIFA, the most corrupt organization on the planet, is calling out Paratici for corruption, right? I mean, that's laughable in itself. But I'm not sure that they knew at that moment. But you can bet your bottom dollar, if anyone's going to be thrown under the bus, it will be Paratici, while Levy sits there in his Kevlar vest and helmet, right? Oblivious.
Yep.
The guy's a megalomaniac, okay? And, he's got emperor syndrome. He suffers from emperor syndrome.
He does
indeed.
indeed.
And he has to have control of everything. Why has he got his office at that training ground? The office should not be at the training ground. The office of running a business should be away from the football. You have a head of football to deal with football matters. Yep. Because when the shit hits the fan and something's not wrong, not right, should I say, what do the players do? They bypass the manager and tap on the teacher's
like Danny
office.
Rose.
Say, oh, I don't like the teacher. He's telling me off. That's wrong. When you have a CEO, when you have a boss of a company and you got 5 layers down, you don't, like when you're the T-boy, go to the CEO and say, my boss is giving me a hard time, right? He's treating me like shit. It doesn't work, right? That doesn't happen. And he's going to throw anyone and anyone under the bus. But mark my words, we need to get a DOF in. If we don't get a director of football in, we are going to be in serious, serious trouble. I mean, really serious trouble. And I'd like to introduce you my candidate. He's got as much chance of getting the job under Levy. He don't cost much.
Yeah, certainly won't be.
Well, I mean, we've got. There's probably 2 candidates. You've got Campos.
Before you go there, because we're going to do a section on that. Don't jump the gun, Johnny.
No worries, mate.
We're going to get there. So, yeah, like we said, this is just when it goes to worldwide. Again, you've got to look at this and just say, we just need to look at the football club since Sunday. Since Sunday, and we're at what, Wednesday? It's been the Conte announcement at 10:30 after we'd finished recording a thing saying about him returning to work. Then the next day, everything going on. Oh, he made us run 2 kilometers before a match and blah, blah, blah. Now the Paratici press or release yesterday. And now today, I mean, people that are thinking that this club is just going, and then we've got the thought, the very thought that there's going to be a season ticket price hike.
On top of it all.
What
about all the injuries? They're going down like flies.
Yep, we started with 47 wing backs. We're now down to 0.
And then, what about the other thing? While we're on the Italians and while we're on crime, should we maybe mention the fact that our coach, Christian Stellini, was actually banned for 2 years for match fixing? I mean, that one's been sort of swept under the carpet. Let's forget about that one. I mean, the thing is, no one knows what's going to happen because even the bookmakers didn't have Stellini as any shape, way, or form leading the club. They all had Ryan Mason as the worst case scenario. So don't be shocked at the end of the season. Anything could happen. You know, anything could happen in the next half hour at this club.
Yeah, I think even what we're talking about, like, considering last time, it'll probably be old news by the time this comes out, and 58 things would have changed. But now I really want to get onto the subject that you are very passionate about and you've been going on about. I'll let you speak about Paratici and what he's done first, then I'll go after. So fire away, Johnny. What has Paratici done for the club?
Well, I mean, I think I sort of touched on it before. Probably I came a bit too early there, a bit premature. But I think he's been a breath of fresh air in the club. I mean, if you knew what was going on before when you had Hitchin and Levy as a 2-man board picking players. And between the two of them, they managed to fuck up just about every single transfer. I mean, most of them. Didn't you
like George, Kevin and Kudu and Clinton and G and Stambouli and Fazio?
We've got 8 players out on loan that we can't get anything for. I mean, it's a disaster. And that's what's hampering us a lot. And that's what's hampering Paratici, because Europe has no money. Okay, it has no money, and when you pay between 40 and 50 million pounds for a player, it's very, very difficult, almost impossible to get that money back unless you're selling to the Premier League or one of the maybe top 5 teams in Europe. So you've got all these players who are eating away into our money, and no one wants them. When you send them out when you try to loan them out to the club, they tell you they can't afford the full loan fee. They can't afford the wages. And we've just got a whole bunch of players who no one wants back. We don't want them back. And it's hard to get rid of them. So it's not an enviable task he's got there. But I think the signings, a lot of people give him grief for the signings. I think on the whole, his signings have been very good. They might not all have performed. I mean, you look at Richarlison probably and Basuma and say, well, look, you know, that's £80 million spent and they've offered us nothing this season. And that would be a fair point. But injuries and what have you have determined that. I do think, though, that the infrastructure that he's put in place, the scouting, we just didn't have that before. And I think it's imperative that the club who can't compete financially, so we're led to believe, for the big money, we can definitely, if we scout properly and unearth some gems, you know, we want to be buying players for 15, 18 million and turning them into 50 million pound players. If you look at like Campos or what's his name, Pedro Bratz at Benfica, they constantly produce talent that they go on to sell for big money or produce for the club. I think that we need to balance of that. But if he goes and there's no director of football brought in, I really fear for the club. If you think it's bad now, if you've got Levy and a board member choosing players, I don't know where we're going to go. I
Yeah,
really do fear. But we are at the crossroads right now. The club this summer is at the greatest crossroads probably of the last 10 years, I would say.
yeah.
Make
So
or break.
what I would say in agreement with you is the infrastructure he's done certainly has changed or started to change a a culture that has been at the club for ages. But the major thing I'm worried about is, like you said, if we don't get a director of football in, Daniel Levy can say, right, you guys, now that Paratici's gone, off with your heads. We'll go back to the old system. And like you said, this is a huge, huge, huge problem, because if he does that, we're bring Hitchin back. Knowing our luck, we'll reappoint Steve Hitchin. But
he's still looking for a job. I mean, that's how highly
you go.
regarded he is. I mean, what did he leave? Well, 2 years ago, he's still
Yeah, he left
looking.
when Paratici came in. It was Johnny. Do you remember? I said this when it happened. It's like, remember when Gerard Houllier came in to help Roy Evans, and you're like, that's got about 6 months before one of them say this joint thing
100%.
don't work,
Yeah.
and that happened again. And now that happened again. But Paratici, I agree. Boys at We Are Tottenham TV, and big up to my brothers in them too, said if you look at the transfers, he has certainly started making inroads. But again, we've missed out on key target areas because of Mr. Above. Let's not worry about defenders because they'll cost too much money. We'll kick the can further down the road and try and get Bastoni and Gvardiol, because remember, Clement Longgap, as I call him, was the stopgap for these two that would definitely come, because it's easier to get them next season. So when we look at what he's done, he's done a lot. But you've mentioned someone we're going to speak about who next. Luis Campos for me was always the one that fits the ethos. But when we look at what he's done, apart from cause a shitstorm in recent weeks and since this stuff, one thing I did love about him is at least he started coming out and speaking to the fans. He may have been speaking waffle a lot of the time, but at least he communicated with the fans, which is something we haven't had in a long time. So, all right, when he came out, all I heard was blah, blah, blah in a lot of them. But at least he came out and had that communication with the fans that the fans have been crying out for. But yeah, we've just got to make sure that if he does go, we don't.
He had the passion, though. I mean, you know, if you've ever watched The Bench, I've never seen a director of football sit on the bench before.
Yeah, neither.
Like Paratici did, and he used to go mental. I mean, he in fact he used to go more mental than Conte, and
which is a hard thing to do.
I personally love that. You know, there's a guy who cared. Okay, he was either that or he was a great actor.
Yeah.
You could see him. I was thinking to myself, wow, this is not normal. Surely, you know, what's he doing on the bench? Get back in your place. But actually, I grew to admire it, that he was that much involved, and he felt that, you know, he could have his say as well as to what's going on. Let's just hope that Stellini doesn't get carted away and the police don't come on and take him off at half time.
Who knows, mate? Knowing our luck, he could be sacked before Everton, so you never know what's going on at this club. We might be doing another video. So another thing we were going to talk about is, and I'll go first with this one, do we need a director of football going forward? Now, for me, when I look at it, Mauricio Pochettino, right, yeah, Paul Mitchell, but then he left, did well without him until the final month.
Harry didn't leave. I mean, Paul Mitchell, just to clarify here with, you know, Paul Mitchell did a very, you know, he's a very good DOF, right? And he identified the players that he wanted. But what's important of employing a person to do his job and then to nullify him and say, yeah, well, you might have spent 6 months searching and identifying talent, but I'm not going to buy any of them, right? And then put him on gardening leave, okay? We all know his talent. Yep. We all know.
And don't just forget that, Johnny. What I loved about Paul Mitchell as well is he'd already had a relationship with the manager. It weren't right, this manager come in, this director of football.
Well, it worked okay at Southampton, right?
Exactly. They were a match made in heaven. You look at Martin Jol, who didn't even have Arneson. Arneson left while Santini was there, or maybe a little bit after. Martin Jol did well without a director of football. Harry Redknapp, again, without. So I can see the idea for both not having a director of football as well as having one. But I don't know how this works, Johnny. For me, I would have it. I don't know if the director of football comes in and says, right, I'm choosing the manager, or the manager comes in and says, I want this director of football because he works alongside with me. So I don't know if a director of football going forward, just mainly, like you said, to stop Levy getting hold of the reins, I think is essential. But
well, we need like a Paul Barber. We need like a Paul Barber who was at Spurs and then went to Brighton to sit there on the top and keeping Levy away. Let him concentrate on the business of go-karting and Beyonce, okay? And
you mean
digging
overselling
tunnels
Beyonce?
and building hotels and whatever he wants to do, okay? And let a proper football man run the club, because that's what we need. We need a football guy in charge of football matters. And I just think that it's imperative that happens. I don't think you can. I think nowadays you need, your scouting networks. Yes, you've got your Y Scouts and you've got all these other apps that allow you to monitor players and stuff. But you need to have ears and eyes on the ground across the world, build up a network. I mean, the amount of players this club lost on our doorstep to Arsenal is embarrassing. Embarrassing. Arsenal should have had 50% of what they've got, and we should have had the other 50%. Chelsea have gone and bought a lot of their talent, but we've missed so much of it. And we're playing catch up. We're seriously playing catch up. And I think it's imperative that you have a director of football. I really do. And if you strip it all out, I think we're going back to the dark ages.
So who's your choice? So if you had the overall choice, I'll tell you my for me, and I'll give you the analogy I always use. For me, it's Luis Campos, and the reason I say Luis Campos is he fits the Spurs' or Levy's mantra is buy young, identify young, buy cheap, and sell high. That is to me Luis Campos in a synopsis. But I liken it when we were linked with him and Paratici. You've obviously seen the movie Pretty Woman, haven't you?
Yeah.
Julia, when he's scared of heights, but he has the penthouse, he goes, Julia Roberts says, why have you got the penthouse if you're scared of heights? He goes, well, it's the best. Well, that's what he did with Paratici. He was like, oh, I've got to get Paratici because he's the bigger name and he brokers the bigger deals.
Well, he won. He was direct. He was won the award for World Director of Football of the Year.
Brown envelope. You and me could win Director of World Football if we got enough money to do it. So for me, it would have been Louis Cat. Obviously, Paul Mitchell's off the table, I would think, unless something miraculous happens. But
I can't see him going back. How do you go back?
With new owners and Poch, maybe. Levy and Poch, hell no. But who would be your choice?
Well, it would have to be Campos or Pedro Bratz of.
So I don't know a lot about Bratz. I hadn't been until you mentioned.
I mean,
so maybe
listen,
talk a bit about him.
If you consider first of all what him and Schmidt are doing there, the manager. I mean, I'd like to take them as a win double, right?
Schmidt and Bratz. That sounds like a toothpaste company or something.
Pedro Bratz and Schmidt. As a manager, director of football double act, that would be great. But I can't see Benfica allowing us to rip out the heart of their club. But he's brought forward lots of players. I mean, we all know how many players leave Benfica every other year. You've got what's his name, Nuno, haven't you? Darwin Núñez.
Yep.
And you've got Hernandez. Went to Chelsea. So that's probably 200 million there just in those two players. There's probably a lot more. Campos is obviously the standout guy.
Yep.
He's still in his 50s. I think he's about 58. So, he's still got his finger on the pulse. I mean, he's produced so many players. Martial, Moutinho. I mean, the list, you could go through the list of players. I can't remember them all, but it's quite an extensive list. And he was very, very successful at Monaco. He's had a bit of a rough ride at PSG, but then I think everybody does. I think the weight of expectation is much higher at PSG than it was at Monaco.
Yep.
But when you consider Monaco have never been huge spenders, they've been big sellers of talent. Produce, sell. I think that's what we need as a club. If you look at Arsenal, they produce even their waste, sells. Iwobi, Willocks,
Yeah, it's a good point.
Lots. We've got Tanganga and Winks. I mean, bag of crisps and a bottle of pop. I don't know. They're not worth much, right? You know, I'm not going to start slagging our talent, but we need to stop the gravy train. I've got a lot of hope for Donnelly, Devine, and Mundell.
Yep.
They're the three standouts, and Papasar, and unfortunately Brian Gill is a great talent, but I'm not sure he was loving life in N17. So I don't know what's going to happen, but we can't afford to not get a DOF. But do not be surprised that he doesn't appoint one if Paratici goes. Will Gabbanini take over and slot in and be a consultant for Daniel? That's potential. So you keep the infrastructure.
Yep.
But Daniel should not be near the frigging club. He should not be making decisions, okay?
He should not.
Point? What is the point? Everyone thinks it's Paratici that will decide on the manager. No, he will make the suggestions. He will take them to Daniel, but ultimately the emperor will point his finger and say, it's you. You're the one.
We're going to have to wait and see. Let's just face it. It's now 6:24 p.m. on Wednesday, the 29th of March, 2023. Now, I beg of you, I plead with you, Tottenham Hotspur, and most importantly, Daniel Levy, please, can we just try and get to Monday without being embarrassed, without being banter FC, without being like, oh my God, here we go again. This is getting, I mean, you can't write the shit that is happening at our football club, and we are looking like the biggest joke.
What about the women's coach? We haven't even mentioned her. I mean,
oh God, yeah, she's gone as well, hasn't she? So she's going to be winning the trophy.
Coach, the top women's coach. She had a fantastic record, and then she came to Spurs, and then the whole season's fallen apart. Her whole career's fallen apart.
But don't worry, Johnny. Don't worry, because it's everyone else's fault. It's the managers, it's the players, it's the scouts, it's the medical team. Mate, listen, this is absolutely a joke, and I just hope. I hope that we'll get it. You getting a phone call?
Hello? Yeah, Daniel? Yeah, I've got a stethoscope. Yeah. No, I haven't got any medical experience at all. It doesn't matter. Okay. I'll come down to the training ground and give the players a look over. No problem. Speak to you soon. Thanks a lot, Daniel. Cheers.
Right, mate. I knew you were a man with connections, but my God. That's a good one.
I mean, that's a joke it is. I mean, come on. I mean, honestly, the medical staff, you know, it's like 10 little Indians, right? Boom, 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 one after the other. They're going down like Skittles.
Yep.
Okay. It's embarrassing. Not one other club in the Prem has lost as many players as we have lost this season. And when will it stop?
And staff.
And staff. But there's one man who stands above it all. Mr. Kevlar himself.
Mate, Mr. 501. But Johnny, listen, this is Johnny's Twitter handle. It's been there. I want everyone in the comments to let us know what you've been thinking of mine and Johnny's segments that we're doing. They are going to become a regular thing. Let us know what your comments of all things we have covered. And Johnny, all I can say once again is thank you for your time. It's always.
I wonder what tomorrow will bring. Please God, yeah. Nothing.
I wonder what tomorrow. I wonder what before. I mean, you and me will probably be on a space this evening because something else has happened. Who knows?
We'll be on spaces tonight for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it will. But I will just say at the end, like, comment, subscribe, and as always, Levy out.